Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Tammy Peterman. I am pleased to be involved in the search for the new dean for the School of Nursing, and I wanted to briefly introduce our next presenter. Dr. Wilson received his baccalaureate degree from Graceland College, now Graceland University, received his master's degree from University of Utah, and word has it he received his PhD here from University of Kansas. And he gives Rita Clifford great credit for some of that as well. And I think we will have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Wilson, hearing a little bit more about him so that we can all get to know him a little bit better, but also hearing some of his thoughts for the future. He has a number of keen interests that I think he'll probably share with you, and know that clearly we have this for everyone in the room. We're also live streaming this. We have interactive TV, I think, with a number of locations, and then we'll be recording this so it can be heard by others later as well, should they not be able to hear it today. So I think we'll make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to hear you. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Thad Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Let's try that. Just for the record, in addition to being an alumnus, I am also a huge fan of the Kansas City Chiefs, Royals, Mavericks, T-Bones, Sporting KC, and any other sporting venue for Kansas City. So you'll know that I do believe in this area. So I'm going to attempt to cover as quickly as possible three areas of interest that some of you may or may not know: who I am, and then why KU. And this is really me selling myself to you as to why I want to be here at KU. And then lastly, we're going to look into that crystal ball and see what we can see. So this is my fifth grade class picture. And for those of you that are unable to pick out the really handsome guy, the reason I put this picture up is that in the fifth grade, I was voted class president. And that was my first foray into leadership. Since then, I've held a number of leadership positions, and I'm going to share some of those with you. But I'm pretty sure that for those of you who are old enough to know what I'm talking about, the real key was that the Dickie was the seller in this picture. And I got to be president. So at least some of you know what I'm talking about, right? For the people who don't know what that's about, ask somebody who's maybe a little older. Talk a little bit about my leadership style before I talk about the leadership that I've had. I really am about fulfilling careers, not filling positions. I have, in my experience, worked very hard to lift up those that work with me to fulfill your careers, and I want the faculty and the staff of the School of Nursing to know that that will continue if I'm dean. Because I believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So if your careers are excelling, then the School of Nursing will excel. So my job is to get you to be even more successful than you are, because I believe we as a school, and I will apologize now, I came from UMKC School of Nursing. I'm at the University of Iowa College of Nursing, and I may say college or school interchangeably. I really am talking about the School of Nursing. The other aspect of my leadership style is a consensus builder. I believe that we can only do things if we do them together. That there are leaders who are very dictatorial and they're very successful. That's not my style. My style is to get us to work together towards a common goal. So if you're the kind of person that likes to participate in those kinds of things, we'll get along well. Recently took a strengths quest. For those of you that haven't taken that type of a screening, it identifies your leadership skills and then it puts them into categories. So my two great categories were the influencing and the strategic thinking. And I think they're fairly reflective, really, of who I am as a leader. Woo is the ability to influence others. And that has really been the hallmark of my career, is being able to influence others so that we do come to a consensus and a common goal. I believe that communication is absolutely critical. Communication throughout the institution is critical, and I'll do everything I can as dean to assure that you get to know everything you need to know, that there is a high level of transparency. And then again, a maximizer. My job is to see to it that everybody is successful. In terms of strategic thinking, futuristic and strategic seem kind of odd to put in the category called strategic thinking, but nonetheless, I do attempt in every case in all of my journal reading and all of my searching online looking for what the future has to hold, and I'll share some of that with you today as I stare into the crystal ball. So healthcare leadership. I've had a leadership role in several healthcare institutions in my lifetime. The first one is La Buena Fe Clinic in Honduras. Immediately out of my baccalaureate program, I became the director of clinical services at La Buena Fe Clinic, which sounds like a really big title. The truth of the matter is there was myself and for a while myself. Later on, we ended up with a couple of other nurses. We provided health care to about 5,000 people in a very rural part of Honduras. And if you get me started telling stories, you may want to check your watch because I can go on for a very long time, even though this was a long time ago. But directly out of my baccalaureate program, I was a clinical leader. After that, I came back, and since I had functioned as a nurse practitioner for a couple of years, I decided to go to school to become a nurse practitioner, and following that, I taught for 5 years at Graceland College, now university, in their nursing program, and I wanted to implement and use my nurse practitioner skills, so got a grant and became the director for the Health Promotion Center, which is still it still exists today with the Graceland University Division of Nursing, and was in charge of and ran a center there. After that, I really took a step into leadership, and I was the director for clinical services for the pediatric care centers at Children's Mercy Hospital for 8 years. We went from a minus $50,000 a year budget to a plus $250,000 a year budget in 5 years, and we went from about 6 nurses to a staff of about 40 in the time that I was there. So we really grew that program, and I did share in the leadership role with a physician who was in charge of medical services. We made a great team, we made some great changes, and I learned a great deal about how to be a good leader in that role. Really good role models there as well. Then I decided to take a foray into politics. At the time, I didn't realize that I was going into politics, but I became the director for the Kansas City School Health Organization, which is housed in the Kansas City, Missouri School District. So now you understand what I mean by going into politics. I was there for 2 years. I was the first employee, and when I left, we had a $2.8 million budget, and we had over 50 employees, and we were providing health services in terms of case management for the 36,000 students in the school district. I realized at that point I wasn't a very good politician. I wasn't really willing to compromise, and so decided to go back into education and went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Those are the health care leadership positions. I've had leadership positions in colleges and universities as well. While at Graceland College, I led the Health Promotion Center. I was also in charge, or was the coordinator for the undergraduate program. The reason I put that up there is that it is a small private college, and for those who have ever taught at a small private college, you know that you do everything. The only thing I didn't do was sweep the floors. But we provided all counseling, all advising, everything to do with student services, everything to do with academics. We did it all, and so I learned a great deal about what it means to be a faculty member. Then moved on to the mid-sized public university as my next academic setting, and was in charge of the Family Nurse Practitioner program, and then became the assistant dean over the undergraduate program, and eventually the senior associate dean over all of the programs, looking at academic, student services, and pretty much everything, including the budget for a certain amount of my job. I'm currently the executive associate dean at the University of Iowa, a Big Ten university. It is a research-intensive university, and it is certainly much different than Graceland. In terms of its scope, it has over 60,000 students and is a well-renowned, nationally renowned college of nursing. So I've learned a great deal there in my short time, and I hope that those skills I learned there could be translated to here. I've had leadership in organizations. My biggest claim to fame is the American College of Nurse Practitioners. I was the president in 2009. This was a national organization for nurse practitioners, one of 2 national organizations for nurse practitioners. Had a laser focus on policy and regulation. So even though I'm not a politician, I learned that it was critical that we, in fact, get involved in policy and regulation. I learned the difference between the two and the importance of keeping tabs and having input on both aspects of it. I'm also a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. I'm on 2 expert panels in that organization. I'm not chair of either, but I do participate on them, and I am participating I'm a fellow in the American Association of Nurse Practitioners, the other nurse practitioner organization, and I'm serving on the board for the Leadership Development Program for that organization. Fabulous program for getting nurse practitioners new in their career and getting them involved and learning what it means to be involved in not only organizations but in politics at a national level. I've also testified before Senate and House hearings in the state of Missouri, particularly on behalf of advanced practice nurses. So I've had organizational leadership as well. The other things I bring in addition to, that I think is pertinent, that I bring to this role, in addition to my leadership skills, is my interest and background in diversity. While at UMKC, we implemented a multi-year program to diversify the student body and the faculty and the staff, and we were incredibly successful and learned a great deal about what you should do and that you might want to avoid in terms of those processes. And I would like to be at an urban located institution again to be able to utilize those skills even more. It is a little more challenging. University of Iowa and Iowa City, our biggest non-white population is the Hispanic or Latino population. Very big challenge to get them into Big Ten University and working very hard to make that happen in the College of Nursing there, but it's a huge challenge. I think while it's not more simple here in KU, I think the setting allows a great deal more opportunity for increasing diversity. The picture up here in your upper right-hand corner is a rural setting because I have learned a great deal about how to reach out into the rural communities of Iowa and what you can do or can't do, again, that you should or shouldn't do as a college or a school of nursing, reaching out and making connections with and serving those in the rural communities. And then in my time at UMKC was a very urban setting. So I have all of that diversity to bring to this role. I also bring a global perspective. I hope that we will be able to discuss with some group during the next day or so opportunities and issues around global health. My first opportunity that I'll share with you was in South Africa. I was a consultant to the University of the Western Cape in Cape Town, South Africa. I was invited to work with the faculty there on developing a master's level nurse practitioner program. I had 2 different trips with a total of over a month there, worked very closely with them as well as with the faculty at Stellenbosch to create an acceptable program for a family nurse practitioner at the master's level. But since it is a government-run healthcare system, we had to also get the government to buy into it, and the government wouldn't buy into it until the South African Nursing Council, the equivalent of the ANA, would buy into it. And so we spent a great deal of time triangulating that, and to my knowledge, we still don't have a master's level family nurse practitioner program in South Africa, although there's now a coalition of schools that are working on it, and I still stay in touch. Having spent time in Honduras, I don't want to leave them behind. I've had a life-changing experience there, and so I thought it would only be wise to take students back. So for a number of years, I've taken students, both nursing and pharmacy and medicine, back to Honduras to help those students understand what it's like to be in a third world country in another healthcare system. It is not a mission trip that I have led, and I will tell you off the top of my head, I'm not a huge fan of mission trips, because when I was in Latin America, the people would come with the mission trips and then they would leave. And those who are left behind, it's a bigger challenge. So I think it should be an educational experience. So I've been leading educational experiences to Honduras for a number of years. And now that we have relationships with Cuba, I can tell you that I went before we had relationships with Cuba. And no, I don't worry about getting arrested. I was actually with a People to People. We're taking folks to Cuba to examine their healthcare systems. And I was on the last team allowed to go before they actually shut down all travel to Cuba in 2005. I was absolutely amazed. And again, I could go on for hours about the fabulous healthcare system they run with virtually no money. And when I look at the amount of money we pour into our healthcare system and how our health outcomes are actually significantly worse than they are in Cuba, it is a perspective that I can bring, I think, both to education and to the policy-making side of health in the United States. So why KU? Well, I love Kansas City. I've already told you I'm a huge Kansas City sports fan, but that would make it sound like I'm here because, well, you know, KU is the only major institution in Kansas City. That is not why I'm choosing KU. That's not why I'm applying for this position. I actually have obviously a warm place in my heart for KU, but I also think that the long and wonderful history of the School of Nursing and the future that I see for KU is outstanding, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to be part of it, if I can, in the way of leadership. So I found this quote recently from the provost at Harvard, who said the future is not really about online education, it's about rethinking education. And when I read this, I thought of KU School of Nursing. KU has a wonderful history of being way out in front of the rest of the country when it comes to rethinking education, rethinking what an undergraduate education should be about, rethinking how we use technology to teach, rethinking about how we use our faculty in the most effective way to teach and also to practice. So I think this is what this encapsulates what I think KU is and why I want to be a part of it. So why not come to KU, one of the region's only school to be listed as a Center for Excellence in Nursing Education by the NLN? Why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? I think I know what it takes to do that because I looked into this when I was at UMKC. It is not a simple thing, and it is quite an honor. So I want to be a part of that. As I've already mentioned, KU is renowned for its distance education. I think we've got more to do and more places to go with that and would like to be a part of it. The NDNQI, while not officially owned by KU anymore, I thought was a stroke of genius that it was here, and would really like to continue to explore other opportunities similar to this one. And obviously, nationally ranked programs, why wouldn't I want to be here? So the highlights about KU for me: one, you're urban located, you're rural serving, and you have a diverse community. All three of those things I find very intriguing and would like to lead. The focus on increasing diversity in nursing over the last few years, the School of Nursing has done some really innovative things in working with faculty and staff, and I do believe that the school is poised to take the next step forward, and I think there's some really great potential there. The new building that's going up for interprofessional education, I am a huge fan of interprofessional education. The dean of the School of Medicine at Salina, I was on a line with him earlier today, and he asked the question about, you know, how do we do this IPE, and is it really worth it, or is it just kind of we're doing it to, you know, make sure we get accreditation? And I shared with him my passion for and my experiences that lead me to be really supportive of interprofessional education. And I think I've got the time I can share this one with you, that when I was at UMKC, the physician in charge of the new residents for OBGYN wanted to bring over the brand new residents and run a code with our senior nursing students, because he said, we do have codes in the OBGYN area and they don't know what to do. They're just totally lost. Okay, fine. So they came over and we had our senior nursing students and 4 residents in the simulation room, and the patient was going downhill, clearly not doing well. And the physician, the residents would talk amongst themselves, and the student nurses would talk amongst themselves, and pretty soon the patient died. And in the debriefing, the physician looked at the residents and said, what happened in there? And they said, well, we were talking amongst ourselves. And he said, yes, I noticed that. Did you think at all to ask anything of the nurses? And they kind of looked at each other and they said, well, we didn't, we would have, you know. And then he turned to the nurses and he said, what was going on in there? And they said, well, the blood pressure was dropping, this was happening. And did you think that was important? Oh, yeah, the patient was going downhill. And nobody said anything. No, nobody said anything. Well, why not? Well, I don't know, we just haven't. They had never really experienced team. So the next scenario, they got together and they experienced team. And they talked to each other about, well, what is it you can do, and what are the boundaries, and what should I look to you for, and what should I look to you for, and how should I expect from this, and what should I expect from you? And the next scenario, of course, the patient did wonderfully and was revived, and everything was wonderful. And I saw in their faces and in their minds this awakening to, if we function as a team, we will be successful. And if we don't function as a team, we won't be successful. Can that be learned in a clinical setting without the direction of a simulation? I think it's really difficult. If we start early and we educate, I think it's certainly possible. Am I preaching to the choir here? Because I kind of get a sense you all are buying into this. All right, well, that's why, amen. Well, let's do that. I am particularly enamored with the efforts that have been made in the last few years to increase the number of doctorally prepared faculty at the School of Nursing. I thought that also was a really smart move. And with the silver tsunami that's coming our way, which is, I don't know if that's a term you hear here, but it is one we hear in the Big Ten all the time about all of the nurses that are professors that are going to leave and retire. Though here at KU you have a wonderful program in which you don't let people retire. You keep the hooks in them, you keep reeling them back in. And I like that. I want to learn about that one as Rita's sitting here. So let's look to the future in the last few minutes here. For those of you that, again, might remember this from the 1960s, there was George Carlin was the hippy-dippy weatherman. And you can see on the screen the obviousness of what he would report. Well, the reason I put that up is that in forecasting today, or in futures today, we've stopped looking in the crystal ball and we've started to be more like weathermen or weather people. In that we aren't going to predict something, we're going to forecast the likelihood of something. As people often say, I wish I had a job where I could be right 50% of the time and be the most successful person at my job, which is what they claim weather people do. Well, so I have stolen and borrowed with permission from Jeff Bauer, Upgrading Leadership's Crystal Ball, in which he talks about forecasting, which are estimates based on the probabilities of possibilities. So I'm not going to do the crystal ball today, but I am going to do some forecasting, what the percentage of likelihood. Before we do that, just obviously healthcare is something very different today than it's been in the past. We used to just sit around and wait for people to get sick and come to us. We're not doing that anymore. We're reaching out. We're focusing on wellness and health like we've never done before. The Affordable Care Act has fixed some of the financing, but obviously not really changed the system dramatically, but it is forcing the system to change. So that influences what we're going to be talking about. So prediction number one. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years that there was a 60% chance that nursing is going to shift its focus of care out of the tertiary care center into ambulatory care, community health, and other settings. There's about a 30% chance that the ratio we have today is going to stay the same, and I think there'll be a 10% chance that it's going to go up. So there might be a few of you here in the room who are going, 60%? No, it's more like 80. It's 85. We are shifting out of. And I would love to believe that, but we have to be honest with ourselves. The people who control the money right now are in tertiary care centers, and they're not really anxious to completely change everything overnight. So as a large ship, it takes time to shift itself and turn itself in the ocean. I think it's going to take time. I do think there is a 60% chance that we are going to have nurses shifting, the majority of nursing care shifting out of the tertiary care center. Now that has obvious implications for education. Are we going to educate our nurses in a way that guarantees that they have a job today, or are we educating them for what they're going to do in the future? Now, I think KU School of Nursing has got a pretty good curriculum for that future. I think you've actually done some good predicting. The question that we have to ask ourselves is how far are we willing to go, realizing that in undergraduate education, they still have to pass the NCLEX exam, which is 84% med-surg inpatient questions. We've got to prepare them for that, otherwise they can't be nurses, but we need to be preparing them for the future. So maybe we have a 60% chance that our curriculum will change. That part I didn't want to predict at this point. Prediction number two, I believe there's a 100% chance that the dissonance between the practice doctorate and the research doctorate will continue. I hear some chuckles in there as people are shaking their head. I am a PhD prepared family nurse practitioner, so I got in before there was the dissonance. But I do hear and I do see and I do read that there is a challenge as we look at the incredible growth in the number of people choosing the practice doctorate, the DNP, and the relative stableness of those who are choosing the PhD. I talked with Julianne Sebastian, the Dean at the University of Nebraska the other day, and she said, well, you can't keep saying that we're relatively stable. Over the last 10 years, the PhD, numbers of students in PhD program has risen 40%. I said, yeah, but 40% of 10 isn't a lot. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the sheer numbers, and when we look again at the silver tsunami at the other end, the sheer numbers in PhD prepared nurse scientists is going to go down. And part of that will be blamed on the DNP. But I think the reality is that we just have to accept the fact that there are a lot of people who love the practice, they got into nursing for the practice, and they're going to continue to choose the practice doctorate. So how do we keep the numbers or increase the numbers of nursing scientists? So a 100% chance that the number of nurse scientists will decrease and that issue will intensify for us as a profession, because we have to have nurse scientists in the profession. So I think that there's about a 40% chance that we are going to shift the way that we look at this, and we're going to be a little more like our brothers and sisters in medicine, where we say, okay, you all go get your practice degree first, and then those of you that are really interested in being scientists, come back and get your PhD. Now, if that's what we're going to do, and I think there's a 40% chance that'll happen, what are we doing at KU to ensure that DNP-prepared individuals who want to be nurse scientists don't come back to school for 5 years? Because that's not going to happen. So we have to be looking forward and thinking about that for the future. Prediction number 3, this is the one I put the rain on. 70% chance that there will be further funding cuts in higher education. This one doesn't take a crystal ball. Unless we see dramatic increases in tax revenue in Kansas, I don't think we're going to see a lot more money coming towards higher education. We have to be thinking about other ways to fund education. I think there's about a 20% chance that the funding will remain the same, because as the economy picks up, there may be enough tax dollars that they'll certainly not cut. And I see a lot of heads shaking no. So, okay, that may be too high. A 10% chance of increased funding, because I am an optimist. Prediction number 4, I think there's a 90% chance that there'll be an inadequate number of doctorally prepared, particularly nurse scientists, to really lead our profession in the future. Again, the silver tsunami that's happening. I hope and pray that there is a 10% chance that cloning will solve this problem for us. So Rita, before you leave, we need to swab your cheek on the way out, just to make sure. And I put on here, does Netflix have the solution? You all heard what happened in Netflix, right? Netflix this past 2 weeks has announced that all employees get 1 year paid leave if they want for maternity or paternity. Now, what they've done is they've offered what the employees, most of the people at Netflix are under the age of 30, what they want, because that's what they're saying they want, because that will keep them there. Well, are we going to have to think about something as out of the box as that? Now, that's expensive. So we'll have to keep that, remember that funding slide a couple ago? We have to keep that in mind, but do we need to be thinking outside of the box on how to attract people into graduate education and what we do to keep faculty engaged and willing to be faculty? There was a time when being a faculty member was fabulous and wonderful, because you had all the flexibility and all the freedom. You didn't have to punch a clock. If class wasn't there, you could be at home doing things. Well, the other companies of the world have caught up with us, and they now allow that at Netflix. You can come and go as you please. You can work from home. You can bring your dog. You can bring your kids, whatever you want to do. Okay, being a faculty member now doesn't have that advantage. So we may need to be thinking about what we should do outside of cloning to make sure that we have adequate numbers of faculty. I think there's a 75% chance that nursing will actually respond this time and diversify its ranks. We've talked about it for a long time. I did a welcome for the RN to BSN students at the University of Iowa the other day. There were 100 and some of them in the room. I think there were 8 men. And I said, welcome. I'm going to be just bluntly honest about my age here and tell you, when I graduated from my undergraduate bachelor's program in 1976, 7% of practicing nurses were men. We have now jumped in those 30 some odd years up to 7% of practicing nurses are men. We have not responded. The percentage of nurses who are practicing who are from African American descent, from Latino descent, we have actually increased in Asian Americans. We've just not done a good job. We have to do that if we're going to meet the needs of Kansas and of the world. So I think that this time nursing's got it, and we're going to figure out a way to do it. I think there's a 20% chance that we will try again and fail again. And I think there's a 5% chance that nursing will in fact become more homogeneous. And the reason I say that is because we have structures in place that aren't terribly inviting to those who are not represented well in nursing, and we have to break those barriers down. They may not go down as easily as I would like for them to go down. So maybe if we have some time later on, if you're interested, here are some other things I think we need to talk about. The role of competency testing in nursing education and licensure. I believe it's coming. I think there's a high likelihood that it's coming, and we should be at the forefront of that. Why don't we license the competency testing and sell it to the country? I do believe that we need to talk more about IP and what it means to make that successful. The entry into practice, I always put that up because we've been at that forever, and you just got to keep trying. Successful recruiting into nursing. I've got some ideas and some predictions about that. I have some predictions about nursing's political influence. As we get more doctorally prepared nurses, I think our political influence will continue to grow. And then if you really want to get into the quagmire, I'd love to talk to you about advanced practice nursing in Kansas. I moved from Missouri, the 50th worst state in the nation for advanced practice nurse practice, to Iowa, one of the #1 in the nation for independent practice. And now I'm considering moving to Kansas. What number is Kansas? 49th? I hope we're a little higher than that. We're pretty good. Okay, well, okay. Moving right along. So, and everybody know who Ray Kroc is? Okay, yeah. McDonald's, yeah. 2 most important requirements for major success. Now notice he says major. First, being in the right place at the right time, and second, doing something about it. I believe University of Kansas School of Nursing is in the right place at the right time with the right resources. I would love to join you and do something about it. Take us to the next level. Thank you very much, and I'm going to open it to questions, give you time for questions. If anyone at the offsites has questions, feel free to notify us. All right, anybody here?
Thank you for the great presentation. Just as an aside, I noticed you mentioned the Jayhawks as your favorite. I'm assuming that was just an oversight.
Did I not start with Jayhawks? Did I start with the Chiefs? Oh, my mother-in-law is turning over in her grave. My mother-in-law is a huge Jayhawk fan, and she instilled in me that love. That's one of the reasons I came here.
Question, though, is could you tell us a little bit about your experience with schools, health professions, or allied health, especially with respect to the interprofessional educational things you discussed, and I know you have some very strong programs that are represented by our school at Iowa, and your experience working with those.
My experience, while limited, has been nothing but energizing. We have a program at the University of Iowa where they start out with first-year med students and first-year virtually all allied health, including speech and language and PT and OT. I'm trying to think of all of them, nursing and physicians, and they put them in teams. And they start at the beginning of their first year. This is a 2-year program. They begin with a basic scenario. Here's Martha Jones. She's 60-some years old, and here's some issues that she has. So the first thing they have to do is they have to go around the table, and they have to say, I'm here from, and then the second part of that is, and here's how the world views me. I found that really fascinating. The medical student said, well, the world views me as knowing everything about everything, and so I have to know everything about everything. And the pharmacist said, well, the world views me as a pill counter. And the nurse said, well, everybody views me as changing bedpans. And the speech therapist said, well, all people think I do is sit around with stroke people all day and just, twiddle my thumbs. And the physical therapist said, and everybody thinks all I do is hurt people. All I ever hear is that I go hurt people. And the second time around, then you had to say, based on what you heard around this table, what does a pharmacist do? What does a physician do? What does a speech therapist do? And that was even more enlightening because nobody could come up with an answer beyond physicians. Physicians diagnose and treat. Okay, what does a physical therapist do? I really don't know, other than they inflict pain. What I saw rise out of that were the individuals in allied health really taking a strong stance and talking about their educational preparation and what they do for patients and clients in healthcare. I was very amazed at how articulate they were and how well they were able to include themselves in this decision-making. So in terms of interprofessional education, and we're almost to our second year. It starts in January, so I'm almost to the second year with the group that I'm with now. I've really watched with a great deal of joy as this team has gotten together and began to communicate. The one person we don't have on our team is social work, and I have to keep interjecting because the answer to everything is, well, just refer them to social work. Oh, well, they can't do this. Well, we'll just refer them to social work. So about midway through that first year, I said, we're in a small rural community in Iowa. There is no social worker, so stop that as an option. What are you going to do as a physical therapist to help this person who doesn't have money to pay for transportation to come? Great problem solving, great articulation of what they do in the world. And I feel very supportive of keeping that team together for as long as we can so that everybody gets to really work together. I don't know if that answered your question well enough, but yeah, okay. Yes.
The different institutions that you've been with, what has your relationship been with the School of Medicine at those facilities?
Well, I don't want to do a Jon Stewart look here too much, but it's been mixed, I have to be honest with you. I openly fought against the anesthesia assistant program that they started at UMKC, did not feel it was necessary with a robust CRNA program that we had. On the other hand, had great relationship with the people that were working to increase our interprofessional education experiences, and also with Susan Wilson, who was leading their diversity efforts at the School of Medicine at the time. I had a good relationship with the dean at the School of Medicine there. I have a good relationship with Dr. Schwinn up in Iowa. We clearly don't see eye to eye on everything, and I share my opinions and thoughts, and she shares hers. And I would say that I have a good collegial working relationship. I understand the dynamics, that until nursing controls the purse strings as much as medicine does, we're probably not going to have the power at the table that they do, just as the way it's going to be. So I've had very good relationships, not always collegial, sometimes adversarial, but I've always done it in a respectful way and felt the same was received. I received the same back, very collegial. I would hope that that would continue here. We had an interesting discussion this morning as we had the deans from Salina and Wichita on, and one of the first questions was, what do you think about advanced practice nurses and independent practice? And I had to swallow and say, I'm a strong advocate for it. And I have this much data to prove my point of view, and until a physician gets that much data to refute my point of view, I'm going to stick to my guns. So if you have data, share it with me. Well, that ended the conversation, because we know there is no data that supports supervision of physicians over nurse practitioners. So I have some pretty strong opinions, and I will do what I can to push those forward, but I'll always do it in a collegial manner, because I think if we don't work together, there's no reason to fight. There's more than enough work out there for us all if we work together. Yes, ma'am.
What's been your experience with fundraising?
Okay, wait, and thank you, Rita, for picking on the one weakness that I have. Really pretty limited. I have to be honest with you. It is fairly limited, and I know that's a big role of a dean. So I've been doing everything I can to learn from from the deans that I've worked with about what it means to be a good fundraiser. Iowa is unbelievably successful, and I have talked often with Dean Frantz about how she does what she does, because it amazes me that we'll be sitting around and I don't even know that she's been out of the office, and somebody says, oh yeah, we got another $2 million yesterday. How do you do that? Well, there's several things that bring you to that point. One is you have a strong and long history in undergraduate education, because everybody goes back to their undergraduate education alumni first, and then their graduate education second and third. So thank goodness, KU's got a wonderful and long history for undergraduate alumni, undergraduate programs leading to alumni. So my one experience was a positive experience. I was, during my time as the interim or acting dean at UMKC, the development officer came to me and said, we're going to meet with so-and-so today, and they want to give $50,000 to open up a school of nursing in Zimbabwe. I said, $50,000? And she said, yeah, that's, and she said, it's kind of a waste of time. I don't think they're going to change their mind, and we're not going to get the money, and it's only $50,000, but we'll go talk to her anyway. So I went with her and I said, look, I've been to South Africa. I've worked really hard to try and get a Master Prepared FNP program up, and let me tell you what it's going to take. And so I listed off what I thought it would take. And it was somewhere around $500,000. And I said, so we're welcome. I am open to you giving us $500,000. But if you can't do that, let me tell you where I think you can better use your money. And we were together for about 2 hours, and at the end of it, she said, I agree with him. I'm going to give my $50,000. We're going to do it in this way. I don't think it's logical to do that. So I came away feeling, oh, okay, well, I can do this. I can raise money. That's one experience, and it was successful. So I think I'm great. I don't know. It certainly is an area of weakness. I'm meeting with the development team either later today or tomorrow, but you have a wonderful development team. I know some of the folks on that team, and I would want to learn from them and do my best to take that role of the dean and embrace it and be good at it. Other questions? We got time.
So you've been in multiple different institutions, all of which I'm sure have different relationships with their hospital partners. Can you talk a little bit about that, how it's not only different at those sites, but how you think it works best?
Okay. Graceland didn't have one, but UMKC really struggled to develop a close relationship with Truman Medical Center. They were independent entities. There were talks about making them a single entity, similar to an academic health center like we have at KU. Notice I'm saying we already, isn't that good? And they'd like to have at KU. The challenges there, I felt like if we had a better relationship, we could do so much more together. We tried. The chair of the nursing program, or the CNO, when I left, was a really great person who was working really hard to link with UMKC School of Nursing. I felt like there were great opportunities for research, for practice, for implementation of quality improvement. There were lots of opportunities, but there were so many barriers because we were independent institutions that I was frustrated with it, to be frank. We did do a few things, and I felt like we had some success with a residency program, for example, but more times than not, I found the barriers to be bigger than I wanted to take the time and energy to tackle. So getting to Iowa with a massive academic health center, very similar here in that it's literally across the street or attached, and we have a good working relationship. I've learned a great deal about what can be done. The linking for the research, and I shared with somebody this morning that anytime a faculty member at the College of Nursing says, I'd like to do research in this particular area, our Associate Dean for Research said, and how can we include our academic health partner? What can we do with the hospital? How can we partner with them? Who can we use to make the links or whatever? The same thing is done with their Director of Research over at the hospital. Anytime a nurse has a QI question or wants to do some research, the first question is, and how can we link in the College of Nursing? That one simple step has opened up multiple doors. So I think that just getting people together, getting to know each other, and creating an atmosphere where people are comfortable with each other, I think opens those doors even more. On the clinical side, I think that there's tremendous opportunities, and I would hope that we would be able to together to create some new and exciting and innovative ways to approach clinical. There's a number of models out there for undergraduate education and for graduate education. I haven't explored enough to know exactly how that is in place here, but I would like to explore it further so that we can be partners in that realm. I think the key is getting to really know each other and to know each other's goals and ideals and where you'd like to be and what you would like to do. And from there, then you can grow that experience. It's wonderful in Iowa, I have to admit. There's very little that we do that I don't think, well, I wonder if I should contact Kenneth Remfer, the CNO, or should I contact Sharon Tucker, the Director of Research, and see, can we make a link? It just becomes a part of your mindset. It may be that way here already, I don't know. If it is, then the door's wide open as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Doug. Okay. Other questions, comments? You still have 15 minutes of my life here. You're welcome to.
I'd ask one more. You had mentioned around diversity, some of the structures that are in place that have been a real challenge. Can you talk about that a little bit more? What are the structures that prevent addressing these issues for the last 30 years?
Well, I'll talk from two different perspectives. I'll start from men first. 2010, I went to the American College of Nurse Practitioners annual conference in Albuquerque. And on the way, I'm riding Southwest Airlines, and I open up the Southwest magazine. And there was this fairly lengthy article that a guy whose daughter was going into nursing was dating a guy who was going to be a nurse. And he talked to his marketing friend about, because she had said, Dad, there's only 2 in our whole class. And he said, well, why aren't men joining nursing? So it was a very long article, and he had all kinds of really bizarre and odd and unusual things, starting with changing the name. It should be a MRS. And or a Noctor. That was his other one he had in there. So he believed that the name nurse was so feminized that, like the airline industry where we call them stewardesses, you now know they're all airline attendants. And that change in nomenclature all opened doors, as well as breaking down other doors about equal pay and opportunities. I think that there's something about the name of nurse and nursing that is still a challenge for young men to accept. So I think we still have lots of those barriers to break down. That is particularly true when you get into the Latino culture and into the African American culture. There's something about that title and about the feminism of that title that is just almost abhorrent to young men. So we still have to work on that. Best thing we can do is have good role models. Here I am. One of the things we found highly successful at UMKC was that you not only needed role models who are men, but you need role models who are African American, you need role models who are Latino. I think that needs to be, again, strategic. So as some of our individuals retire, I think we do a holistic hiring process in which we look for somebody with the credentials and someone who fits our needs within our underrepresented group so that we have good role models. I think we take our graduate students and our seniors and that are in those categories, and we put them forth out into the community so that high schoolers and college and community colleges see African American men who are nurses and say, I can do that. We just need more in front of people, number one. So number two is and I think this is what you've been working on within the school, but the culture itself has to be engaging and opening. Went and did a talk, can't remember where it was, a while back anyway, and one of the people there said, well, we'd love to have more African Americans at our school, but we're just not going to lower our standards. Now, what they were saying, I think, was that we have a 3.0 GPA and we're not going to let anybody in under 3.0, irrespective of what their race may be. But the message to the African Americans in that room was pretty clear. You think we're stupid and we can't come there. I think it's those sometimes off the cuff, we don't know what we're saying things that can really harm our reputation. So I'm hopeful that what's been done in the enrichment program at KU over the last couple of years is helping people open their eyes to that, because it has to be a warm and welcoming and inviting place. And lastly, I think that when we do attract those students, we have to treat them differently. We can't just say you're the same as everybody else, because they're not. Their life experience is different, their life view is different, and yes, we have to treat them differently. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be prejudiced for or against one or another, but you have to accept the fact that somebody whose first language is Spanish and whose family say, you're really not smart enough to be here, even though you are, has to be addressed. We have to put our arms around those people and say, what can we do to assure that you're going to be successful? One of the things we did at UMKC was we hired a full-time social worker to deal with the social issues, because what we saw were the first-generation students, irrespective of their minority status, the first-generation students and those who came from the Kansas City, Missouri School District were just not able to deal with the social issues of life. I had a student drop out because she had a flat tire. I pulled her in for an X interview. I said, why are you leaving school? You're brilliant. I had a flat tire. I don't understand. Well, I have to go back to work to get enough money for a flat tire. I don't have anybody who'll pay for a flat tire. I said, I've got a wallet with a credit card. I'll buy you a flat tire. Please stay in school. Oh, no, I'm not asking for that kind of help. I'll deal with this myself because that's my culture. Helping those social issues before they occur, I think, is critical in terms of enriching nursing in all ways, but it's particularly obvious among first generation and among the minority students that go to Kansas City school districts. And I'm not putting down Kansas City school districts, I just No, they don't have the funding that some of the other school districts have. Yes?
You're obviously intimately involved with the nurse practitioner as an advanced practice role. Can you talk a little about your vision of the other 3 advanced practice roles in nursing?
My vision for the other 3 advanced practice roles. Nurse midwives, love them to pieces. They're kind of a weird group. I can say that because I have friends in the room. I think that nurse midwives and CRNAs do come with a very different world view because they've come from a different birth. The CRNAs and nurse midwives were midwives and anesthetists first and nurses second, historically speaking. And so they do come with a different worldview about how things play out. I worked very, very hard when I was at UMKC to embrace our CNA brothers and sisters into the School of Nursing because they were in the nurse anesthesia program at Truman and getting a master's degree in biology. And they wanted to go to the DNP. Well, their first goal was to become a DNAP, a Doctor of Nurse Anesthesia Practice. And I said, I can't support you in that. I won't support you in that, neither will the dean. So if you want support to make this program happen, you're going to have to find it elsewhere because we're not doing that. We think you should be in the nursing program. As you recall, that CRN, that RN in the middle, it still has the word nurse in it, so you need to be in nursing. We worked with them for over a number of months and convinced them that it was the right thing to do. So I believe that they should be a part of nursing. I also understand that they have their own battles and their own challenges that are very unique for CRNAs. I think the same is true for nurse midwives, that they have some challenges and battles that nurse practitioners haven't had thus far. A lot of nurse practitioners getting privileges at a hospital is like, I'm not sure I want to do that. I'm really primary care oriented. CRNAs and nurse midwives, that's kind of a key thing for them. So they do have different battles. I want to be there to support all groups. I think those 3 in particular really need to have the support of each other and recognize that when there's times you step back and let somebody go fight their own battle. But for the most part, I think they should all be in nursing with a nursing philosophy as their basis for their care and that they consider them part of the team. Clinical nurse specialists, I've had very little to work with clinical nurse specialists in my lifetime, to be honest with you. I understand the role. I think it's very needed. I think that the CNL, the clinical nurse leader, was kind of a response to the dying CNS. It isn't dead, but that was kind of a perception. Obviously, the CNL has taken off in a very different path. We have one at Iowa. But I don't have a good answer for you about the CNS role. I see the value in it. I see the clinical value in it. But I would like them all to be, we'd all be a part of nursing. But exactly how that plays out, I don't know.
Just for the record, I can help you with that. Because I am one.
That's the consensus. See, I watched a little blurb, I guess it was last night I was watching it, that Rachel Maddow put together on Jon Stewart. And for those who know who Jon Stewart is, he's off the air, and for those who loved him, he's gone. One of the things that was said in that show, and it really resonated with me, was that Jon Stewart created more success for others than he did for himself. If you look at the people who worked with him that now have their own shows, there are a number of them. I would like to think I'm the Jon Stewart of nursing. I want all of you to be highly successful. I am not intimidated by your success. In fact, I encourage your success. And if we're going to be the rebirth of the CNS here in the Midwest, let's do it. I will put you on a pedestal and we'll make you queen. Whatever it takes. I believe in you. Yeah, give you a tiara and everything. Other questions? Yes.
Given you the acknowledged challenges in the paucity of nurse scientists and the increasing retirement of senior nurse scientists, what are some of your ideas about
How to get
recruiting and seeing that we maintain a cadre and increase our faculty that are actively engaged in research?
Well, shy of the wait till you get a DNP and we'll recruit you then, which I'm not sure is the best answer, but it is, I think, one. I am convinced that at this point of the game, unless you have a program that is world-renowned and everybody wants to come to you for some reason, the real answer lies in making your own. I think we have to start when they begin, probably their freshman, but if not then certainly their junior year in the nursing program, and start identifying those people who are nurse scholars at that point, people who are interested in it, and really get them in the program and down the line so that when they graduate with their baccalaureate degree, they're already on their way towards that PhD. I don't think that we can continue to sit back and wait for people to get another degree and come back. I really don't think that's the right way to do it. As you know, the average age of a PhD person in electrical engineering, I think, is like 32. And the average age of the PhD, the brand new PhD in the United States in nursing, is somewhere in the late 40s, early 50s. We can't do that. We have got to get PhD nurses prepared in their 30s or even 20s, if at all possible, so they have a long career to mentor the next group. We truly have a paucity of those 40 to 55-year-olds in the United States right now. So I think we have to grow our own. The problem is that that takes time. And my fear is that we won't get that in place, underway, and successful before this group officially retires. Another possible solution is to look overseas. A lot of the growth in overseas PhD students it continues to expand greatly. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. I think there are real challenges with that. And I don't know that it's the full answer, but I think we look overseas. I think we grow our own. And then we've got to make it really look fantastic for those who are right now in their 20s and 30s. I haven't really hit on how to do that yet. I mean, I got my PhD not because I wanted to be a faculty member. And I hear a lot of people in doctoral programs say, I want to be a faculty member, and I know I got to get a doctorate, so I'm going to go back and get a doctorate. That isn't why I did it. I did it because I couldn't answer questions. I had clinical questions that I wanted answered, and I tried to do it, and people who were PhD prepared went, no, you can't do it like that. Don't you know anything about measurement science? Don't you know anything? No, I don't. So I went to get my PhD because I was excited about answering questions. I think there's a way to instill that in the 20s and the 30s-somethings. When they get into the institution and they have questions they want answered and they do a systematic review of the literature and they do a QI project, and you say, that's really good, but wouldn't it be exciting to be the first one to discover the way to do this? I don't know exactly how to market that yet, and I talked marketing with somebody today. I think we really need to market well, grow our own, and look at other markets to draw from, including overseas. None of that's new, is it, Aaron? I mean, Lauren, none of that is new. Yes?
One way we've tried to do that, and I think Iowa also has a BSN honors program. We have a BSN honors program. This last year, we graduated 13 BSN honors students who worked directly with a faculty mentor to do a research study. So,
And that's a way to grow your own, is through an honors program. I think that's a fabulous way to do it. The other thing we have at Iowa that's kind of unique is they have what's called a Young Scientists program. I don't know if we have that here or not. I wasn't able to find it on the website. But these are only 4 people per class that are chosen to work directly with a currently R01 funded researcher and are given a larger role than the honor students are given. And those are the ones who get excited about it. When they graduate, almost 100% of them go right on to graduate education, and about 75% go into PhD. So that's another option, but that's a way to grow your own. I think that we have to do that. Now, when I went to school, and you know when that was, the thought of getting your bachelor's and your graduate degree from the same institution was like a no-no. We don't hire our own. We don't educate our own. I think those days are gone. That is a shift that has already occurred. I think we have to grow our own if we're going to be successful. And I see that it's 1 o'clock, and Darren's probably going to give me a cut or something. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. I knew her.
See you then.